Hello and welcome to this Rivemont MicroCap Strategy monthly update for April 2022. My name is Matthew Martin and I'm a portfolio manager at Rivemont. Before we start, I must mention that this presentation is for informational purposes only. This is not recommendations or investment advice. If I talk about companies during the presentation, Rivemont may hold positions in these companies and may trade on them at any time without prior notice. So let's start with a snapshot of the Rivemont MicroCap Fund as of the end of April. The fund had 13 million in assets under management with a monthly return of minus 6.8% compared to the benchmark at minus 6.4%. So very similar, and 37% was invested in the top 5 holdings. Now, to explain the returns a little bit more, I won't specifically talk about the fund versus the benchmark because the returns were fairly similar, but instead I'll talk about the overall market. Currently we're in a bear market. It's a very tough market out there, and especially in large caps. So I'll give you a few data points. For example, the Nasdaq index was down 13% for the month of April, and it was its worst month since the financial crisis in 2008. If we look at the S&P 500 index, it was down close to 9%, and it's off to its worst start since 1939. Then we can look at bonds. Bonds have a very tough start to the year as well. Actually, it's the worst start since over 100 years. That leads me to the second point, which is there are very few places where someone can hide safely these days. I mean, gold is up a little bit this year. Energy is doing well, but besides that, it's very challenging to generate returns unless you're a short seller that is taking advantage of those asset declines. Now, in terms of outlook, we think the market could remain turbulent for quite some time. When we are in a correction like that, we see sharp declines like we saw in April. It's typically less linked to valuations, and it has more to do with emotions. So people are scared, they want to get out of the market, sometimes at any price. It's one thing to say that valuations are cheap, what we own in our portfolio which is cheap, but people don't care about that currently, and so we could be in for still a few more months of volatility. It's very hard to tell, and I don't know when or why we will see a rebound, but we should see one at some point. And in periods like that, I think it's very important to reiterate the importance of having a long-term investment horizon. The stock market has ups and downs, but typically over the long term, the stock market goes up. So when we have a period like we're in today, and after 6 to 12 months of declines in the market, we have to remind ourselves that the stock market will go up eventually. There will be a rebound at some point, and it's no time to panic and get out of the market, because if we get out of the market at the bottom, we won't be there for the subsequent recovery, and that can hurt long-term returns. Speaking of long-term investment horizon, we've been thinking about our strategy in presenting these monthly updates, and we think that we should put less emphasis on the monthly returns, because monthly returns can fluctuate a lot, especially in a strategy like ours where companies are unknown, illiquid, and can have wild price swings on very low volumes. So we'll put less emphasis on that going forward, but we'll keep telling you about all the good things we're doing with our research process, and also what's our outlook on the market. Now, in terms of other highlights, there was only one thing that happened in April, and it was our due diligence trip to Toronto. Philippe Lapointe and I went to Toronto, Mississauga, and Hamilton to visit 5 companies, and also we met 2 industry partners. It was a very productive trip. We actually met the top 2 largest positions in the microcap fund. The largest one is Microbix Biosystems. It's a healthcare manufacturing company. So we were able to visit the manufacturing facility, to see the labs. They work with live viruses and bacteria, so we were able to see some of the containment zones that they have to make sure they produce safely. And it also felt like it was a very busy company. People were busy, they seemed enthusiastic about working there, and when we look at the numbers, we saw a growing company, but when we went there in person, we also saw a company that seemed to be growing very quickly, so that increased our conviction in this investment idea. And for all of the companies we met, it actually increased our conviction to all those companies for the long term. So especially in a volatile period like we're in today, it's very good to make sure we're invested in the right places. So that's it for the monthly update for April 2022. If you want to get in touch, my contact info is on the screen. You can also send us questions in advance for future monthly updates, and we will try to answer a few questions from the audience going forward. You can also visit the website rivemont.ca, and you will find all the information about the microcap strategy, but also the other Rivemont strategies as well. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next month.